So let's take a look at what Frank has to say. In this particular video, he wants to play good cop and bad cop, but I don't think that he knows which cop he is. Let's take a listen.
If I'm a detective and atheist Michael Shermer is a detective and we come on a dead body and I say, okay, I'm looking at all the evidence here. I think candidate X did it. And Michael Shermer says, no, candidate X did it. Didn't do it. That's the wrong, he's not the murderer. And I say, okay, who is the murderer then? And he says, well, I just lack a belief that your guy's the murderer. Is he a good detective?
Yes. Yes, he is. Because we don't decide that the first suspect that we think of is guilty and assume that they're guilty until such time as someone has a different name. If you have suspect number one and Michael Shermer, as the detective, discovers that suspect number one has an airtight alibi for the time of the crime, then he's entirely within his rights to say, look, Frank, suspect number one can't have done it. I don't know who did do it, but it wasn't suspect one. And Frank's going to say, no, until you, Michael Shermer, gives me suspect number two, I'm just going to continue to pursue and assume that suspect number one did it, even though there's evidence against it. What kind of ridiculousness is this, Frank? You absolutely are a good detective by being able to eliminate wrong answers. Sometimes crimes go unsolved, and that doesn't mean that the police were necessarily in any way negligent in what they were doing. There may not have been the tools available. There may not have been the evidence available. Through other circumstances, the evidence may have been trampled or destroyed or hidden. People may have lied to them. There's all kinds of reasons. You don't judge how good a detective is by whether or not they're just throwing out false accusations and just sticking to them on the sheer principle of things. In North America, we actually presume innocence. We value innocence over finding guilt. So until you can prove that the suspect did it, that's all tentative. So your weird analogy and you're patting yourself on the back that you're a better detective than Michael Shermer is crazy and ill-formed and bad epistemology.
No, shooting down my suspect isn't enough. If he's a good detective, he has to give reasons as to why candidate Y is the murderer.
No, he doesn't. That would be great if he can, but there is sufficient value in someone who's just pointing out that your idea is wrong. And you sticking your head in the sand and being obstinate and stamping your feet because there isn't a replacement theory for your wrong theory is childish and silly.
Not just to say that your guy is the wrong guy. That's all I'm saying, Stott.
And this feels like, an attack on a channel like mine. But listen, Christians, I'm not always telling you that I have the answers to how the precise way in which abiogenesis began in that spectrum from chemistry to biology. And I'm not telling you that we have all the answers of what happened before the Big Bang, if that's even a coherent question. And I don't need to. All I need to be able to do to be an effective skeptic is to point out that there are huge problems with what you're espousing. And that's enough. You need to be comfortable with I don't know. And that's one thing that theists and Christians in general tend not to be as comfortable with as I think they should. All right. So that was Frank. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Am I wrong about this? Do you need to have a suspect on the table to be a good detective? Or is there value in just pointing out when other theories are wrong? Let me know. All right. So after Frank,